So recently I took my friends to a competitive karting event held at Three Sisters Circuit in Wigan. However, this isn't just any normal karting race. With 3 driver stops minimum, a refuelling pit stop and 2 hours of constant driving through different changing conditions, this was going to test all 3 of us completely. So competing today we have me, Jack and Luke, and while I've competed in rental karting events around the UK and am used to driving outdoors and for long periods of time, Jack and Luke have only ever competed in indoor karting circuits for short 15-minute periods of time. So this will take a lot of getting used to for them and for myself to drive especially longer stints up to half an hour or 40 minutes.
Oh, let's do this. Let's do this.
Also, as usual, to give you guys an idea of what the layout for today was going to be like, it was a 20-minute practice/quali first, with the person who was on last during the quali session starting for the race. And then the race was a 2-hour full-length race where you needed, as I said at the start, a minimum of 3 driver stops, and you had to take one of the stops to refuel. But that would be within a 15-minute window that they would specify during the race, so we wouldn't know until then when we would have to bring people in. Now, to be honest with you, we were quite a disorganised team, with the majority of the pit stops and the understanding of communication between us for when we were going to pit was almost done as an improvisation of hand signals as we were driving past the pits, and it did cause a lot of confusion as we get towards the end of the race, which you'll see later. This being a great example of that.
If we're pitting, I'll go like that to say that I'm coming in. You're coming in. I'll go like that.
So our plan for practice/quali was for me to head out and do the first 2 or 3 minutes just to get a feel for the kart and see if it was up to standard, because we did have the choice to swap it if we felt there was something up with it. Then it would be Luke taking over for me, then Jack taking over for Luke, and them doing about 6 or 7 minutes each, and then I would get the last 2 or 3 minutes to just hopefully put 1 or 2 good laps in for us to just be quite as high up the grid as we could possibly be, because obviously with having quite a couple of rookie drivers on our team, we wanted the best start possible. Now, as you can clearly see going around this sweeping right-hander at the end of the straight, you can just see how many karts there are ahead of me, which just didn't allow me to do anything with my stint at all, as I wasn't able to put in any good laps as we were all too bunched up at the start. Now you'll see coming to this same corner, in the middle of the corner there's a line of water straight through the track, and this was causing a load of people difficulties as you'd end up losing traction mid-corner when you're about to get back on the throttle pedal, and this would cause you to slide wide and ruin your lap times. So after about 3 or 4 warm-up laps, I decided to come into the pits and hand the kart off to Luke and Jack so that they could start to get a feel for what the handling of the kart is like, as I've only ever driven indoor ones before, so this would be a completely different ball pit for them. Now Jack and Luke both had pretty decent stints, with both of them putting in lap times that were quite competitive compared to other teams, and it was looking like if I could get on for my last part of qualifying and put in a good lap, then we might be able to finish quite high up the order. Now coming into my stint, I didn't know how long I had left of practice quali, so I was hoping that I'd manage to get 1 out lap and then maybe 2 or 3 quali laps to set us a good time to start the race, hopefully in the top 5 if we were lucky, but at minimum the top 10. However, only 2 corners into this stint and the yellow flags came out, slowing the track right down. To be honest, at the time I wasn't too worried about this, as it was only my out lap, so I was hoping that with the yellow flag out lap I'd actually be able to have a good 2nd and 3rd lap as my proper quali laps. Unfortunately this was not the case, and coming around the sweeping right-hander at the end of the straight, the track actually got red flagged. And this wasn't because of any incident or crash that had happened, this was actually because they were stopping us all so they could grid us for the main race. And I mean, you could say this was lucky because I'd actually managed to get into the kart before my first stint, because we had previously agreed that I would do the first and the last stint. But at the same time, we'd actually only been able to put a best quali lap in to put us P13 out of 16, which is definitely not where we were planning on starting. It means we've got a lot of work to put in the actual 2 hours of racing to hopefully put us back as far up the field as we can possibly get. Now, as the lights go green for the start of the race, I actually get a really poor getaway, and I actually nearly lose the position to P14 behind me, who comes down my outside of this corner. I hold it down the inside and then get a good switch back around this next corner, which puts me on the inside for the upcoming corner. I'm hoping that I can actually maintain this position, but I have to kind of give way a little bit as this guy on the outside of me nearly nudges me onto the curb and loses me a load of traction. I get another switchback to get the inside around here, and I'm trying to hold the inside for this next corner, which does actually help me make up 2 positions temporarily. But as we're going down the straight, I'm just realizing that with the slipstream and this kart just has no torque whatsoever. On every exit of every corner, I'm losing so much speed, and you'll see as laps come by in future that even with slipstream, I'm losing out to other people in other karts, as their karts just have so much more torque and high speed. Now for the first 3 or 4 laps, I actually get stuck in this battle for P12, which is between myself, the guy in the red helmet and the white suit next to me, the guy ahead of us who did originally start in P11 I think, and then the guy behind who started P14. Coming to this final hairpin, I look for a move down the inside, but the guy ahead of me shuts the door on me completely. I have a little bit of a slip which hinders my exit pace, and so I'm not as fast and can't catch the guy ahead just yet. But I am looking to get this overtake done within the next couple of corners so that I can start to challenge the karts ahead and see how many positions I can make up on these opening laps. As I'm going around this sweeping right-hander, I'm watching the karts ahead as one of them is pushed wide. I get a decent exit from the corner, which means I've got some good straight line speed, and as I'm going down the slipstream of kart number 14 ahead of me, I look to the inside for the move down into the next corner. He goes around the outside and holds the outside, come into the inside, and as we go over that little patch of wet on the track, I actually slip as well as the kart number 14, but he manages to maintain the position for now. 1 lap later, and coming into the same sweeping right-hander, the 2 karts ahead, kart number 3 and 14, are battling, and I'm hoping that I can capitalise on this and get a better exit onto the straight, which will put me ahead when we get to the corner at the end. However, kart number 3, whether it's a dirty move or not, I'll let you guys decide in the comments, but shoves me a little bit wide onto the curb and gives me absolutely no room, so I have to back out completely. Once again, going over the wet patch, both of them slide to the outside of the track because of the lack of traction, and this gives me an opportunity to take both the positions on this little straight. Coming to the hairpin again, I dive down the inside, which does momentarily get me the position, but the guy gets a switch back because I leave the door completely wide open, which was a mistake on my part, and he manages to get the position back. Then kart number 14 dives down the inside as well in the space that was created by kart number 3, and then they're both back ahead of me and we're in the same position that we were 1 lap ago. Now this battle continues for the best part of about 3 or 4 laps, with us just shuffling the positions back and forth as we're each overtaking each other. Two laps later, and I'm battling the guy in the white suit for P12. I give him the thumbs up as we probably both realise that it's better to work together and try and see if we can catch the karts ahead instead of battling with each other and losing time. This means that the rest of my first stint now becomes a hot lapping session as I'm just trying to catch the people ahead and I'm not battling with anyone myself. So with my first stint complete, I head on into the pits to hand the kart off to Jack, who will be now taking it for the next half an hour and refueling at the end of his stint. So as Jack made his way out onto track to start his first half an hour stint, we'd placed the kart in P13, which we'd actually lost a position by pitting, but realistically we should gain that position back and hopefully a couple more when teams start to pit later on. So while Jack was out completing his stint and maintaining our position in P13, it was up to me and Luke to strategically place our pit stop where we would refuel the kart, as if we brought him in too early or too late, it could risk there being a chance of too many karts pitting at once to refuel, and we could lose loads of positions because of it. So to give Jack the most amount of time that he could possibly have out on track, we decided to bring him in right at the end of the 15 minutes and risk the chance of other cars pitting at the same time, with the hope that everyone would pit right at the start and we'd actually get straight through the refueling process and right back out on track without losing any time. However, unfortunately, Jack actually missed the original signal for him to pit and actually took another 2 laps accidentally, so this ended up bringing us in right as 2 of the karts pitted ahead of us, so we had to wait about 1 or 2 laps to actually get back out on track, which dropped us all the way down to P15. So with myself and Luke's stints left, we now needed a miracle to see if we could get any further positions, as we were now actually a lap behind the next kart ahead of us. So with Luke taking over for Jack for his half-an-hour stint, this was actually going to be the most difficult part of the race, as now it was starting to get dark, and so not only were the temperatures dropping, which means there's less grip out on track, but also the level of visibility was decreasing as well. And this was going to produce some challenges for Luke, as he's only driven in indoor karting circuits before, which are all floodlit. Having said that, Luke actually managed to put in a mega stint and maintain our position in P15. However, the problems arose when we got to the pit stop, as Luke actually came in and did 2 unscheduled pit stops without allowing me to gear up and get into the kart, so we lost a further 1 lap to the 2 karts ahead of us that were closest to us. And this was purely down to just a communication error between the team. So as I geared up and headed out for my stint, I was now 2 laps behind the kart ahead, and we were sat in P15 out of 16, which is definitely not where we want to finish. So I've got a mega stint to put in to hopefully drag back 2 whole laps and then get ahead of the karts ahead of us. So about 10 minutes into my session, I see the marshals waving the yellow flags as I'm coming around this back hairpin, which I do end up slowing down because normally to a yellow flag you have to slow down. But what I didn't notice was the 2 karts behind had either not seen the yellow flag or were just completely ignoring it and were now right on my tail. And then they immediately decide after this to overtake me, so now I've just lost either another lap to people who've already lapped us, or I've just lost position to karts around us who I might be battling purely because I've slowed down on a yellow flag. And so this battle was definitely not what I needed, as I was having to try and put in the best laps I possibly could every lap to see if I could catch the karts ahead, whereas these guys might not even be in the same battle as us, and yet they're taking time away from me as I'm trying to get past them. Now eventually everyone started to space themselves back out again, and this gave me the room I needed to start hot lapping again. And now these were some of the most intense hot laps I've ever done in a rental car ever, as I knew what I had to do was very, very difficult. Unlapping myself twice while overtaking the 2 karts, that was going to be a massive challenge in the 20 minutes that I had left until the end of the race. Now eventually I catch up to our old friend, kart number 3 from the start of the race. And now he's one of the karts that I need to overtake and then lap again in order to pass him for position properly. I send one down the inside of this hairpin, which is completely unchallenged by him, and I gain the position back. Now what I didn't realise until after the race was I was actually lapping 2 or 3 seconds faster than each of the karts ahead of us per lap. So I'd actually passed both of them by this point, so I'd unlapped ourselves once, and so if I passed them again that would actually be for position, but I was still 40 seconds behind, so it was completely down to whether I could make up that 40 seconds in the last 10 minutes of the race. And then proceeded some more of the most intense hot laps of my life. So I was now rapidly catching the karts ahead, but the question was, would I have enough time to overtake them before the checkered flag? However, with about 3 laps to go and I get passed by the race leader, who some of you might know as Perico Karting. Now, as I'm not one of them dirty karters, I give him the thumbs up and let him straight past to continue his lead, instead of hindering his race by pushing him towards the guy in second place. And to be fair to myself, I do actually manage to keep up with him for the majority of about a lap until the other kart passes me and that they both start to pull away. But fortunately for me, this means I not only get to follow their race lines and hopefully improve my own lap times, but also I get to watch the battle for the win unveil right in front of me. Now, considering this was an endurance event and there was karts separated by entire laps, it was quite impressive that these two karts as race leaders were so close together and battling for the win right at the end of the 2 hours. As for my own race, I'd only managed to close the distance by about 30 seconds to the karts ahead, so there was still a remainder of about 5 to 10 seconds, which left us finishing the race in P15, 2 places below where we'd started. Now, even though we finished P15, which is definitely not where we would have liked to finish, I still think we did incredibly well that night as a team, considering we had 2 rookie drivers who've never driven the track before, and myself who hasn't driven there for over 6 months. And considering, if you take away the communication errors that we had for the refueling stop and the pit stop, and take away the difficulties we had with qualifying, considering we didn't actually get a proper quali lap in, I definitely think, take those mistakes away, we definitely could have finished within the top 10. And I think it's safe to say the crash test dummies will be back next year to compete again.